Stop scrolling, because what I'm about to say might expose the real reason certain people have power over you. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Most people think toxic individuals are strong, confident, or fearless. They're not, they are dependent. Dependent on your reactions, your emotions, your explanations, your need to be understood. And without realizing it, you may be feeding that dependence every single day. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one tells you. The moment you react emotionally, you surrender control. The moment you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you give them leverage. And the moment you try to win against a toxic person, you've already lost. But what if the strongest move isn't fighting back? What if it isn't cutting people off dramatically or delivering the perfect comeback? What if real power looks so quiet that most people mistake it for weakness? In the next few minutes, you're going to learn why silence unsettles certain people more than anger, why distance creates respect faster than confrontation, and why the calmest person in the room always holds the most control, even when no one says a word. This isn't about being passive, it's about becoming unreachable. Because when you stop reacting, something strange happens. People either rise to meet your standards or expose exactly why they never could. And once you understand this shift, you'll stop arguing, stop defending, and stop draining yourself trying to fix what was never yours to fix. Stay with me until the end, because the final insight may completely change how you handle conflict, respect, and power for the rest of your life. Listen closely, because this is where most people lose their power without ever realizing it. Toxic people do not operate on logic. They operate on reaction. They are not looking for truth. They are not looking for resolution. They are not looking for growth. They are looking for a response, emotional, impulsive, uncontrolled, anger, defensiveness, explaining yourself, raising your voice, proving your point. Every one of those feels justified in the moment, but psychologically, they all do the same thing. They hand control away. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Most people never confront. Toxic people are deeply dependent people. They depend on external emotional energy to feel significant. Your frustration validates them. Your need to clarify feeds them. Your attempts to be understood give them purpose. That's why arguing with a toxic person feels exhausting, not because you're weak, but because you're supplying fuel to a system designed to drain you. And the system works like this. They provoke, you react, they escalate, you explain, they twist, you defend. Now pause for a second and ask yourself an honest question. At what point in that cycle do you actually gain anything? You don't, because toxic people don't respond to logic. They respond to leverage, and reactions are leverage. Psychologically, when someone sees they can affect your emotional state, they register power, not power in a healthy sense, but control. And once control is established, the behavior doesn't improve, it intensifies. That's why explaining yourself to a toxic person rarely brings clarity. It brings information they will later use against you. This is where maturity changes the game. Mature people stop asking, how do I make them understand? And start asking, why am I giving access to someone who has shown me who they are? Because here's a truth that requires emotional discipline to accept. Being misunderstood by the wrong person is not a problem to fix, it's a boundary to enforce. The strongest people in the room are not the loudest, they are the least reactive. They understand something most people learn too late, that emotional self-control is not repression, it's strategy. When you don't react, something fascinating happens. The toxic person feels exposed. Their behavior no longer has a mirror. There's no emotional feedback loop to bounce off. And without that loop, their tactics lose effectiveness. This is why calm unnerves people who thrive on chaos. It removes their sense of relevance. But here's the part that separates theory from practice. The moment you stop reacting, they will push harder. They'll accuse you of being cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll provoke more aggressively. They may even mock your silence. That escalation is not failure, it's confirmation. It means the strategy is working, because when someone relies on your reactions, losing access feels like losing oxygen, and desperation always reveals character. Your job in that moment is not to explain your silence, not to justify your calm, not to clarify your boundaries again. Your job is to hold the line. Silence is not absence, it's presence with restraint, and restraint is one of the highest forms of power. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become intentional. You choose when to engage. You choose how much access someone gets. You choose whether a conversation deserves your energy. That choice alone rewires the entire dynamic, because the moment a toxic person realizes they cannot predict your reactions, they lose control. And when control disappears, manipulation collapses. Here's something rarely discussed. Most people stay stuck with toxic individuals not because they're afraid of confrontation, but because they're afraid of discomfort. Silence feels awkward, distance feels cruel, not responding feels unnatural. But growth is rarely comfortable, and strength almost never feels polite. The discipline to not react requires you to tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term peace. It requires trusting yourself enough to not defend your character to people committed to misunderstanding it. And once you master this, something shifts internally. You stop feeling pulled into unnecessary conflict. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop negotiating with people who benefit from your confusion. Your nervous system calms. Your thinking sharpens. Your presence becomes grounded, not because the world changed, but because you did. And that's the part toxic people can't tolerate. They don't lose interest because you defeated them. They lose interest because they can no longer access you. And that is the real victory. So remember this and let it sit with you. If someone only feels powerful when you react, your calm is not weakness. It is the quiet removal of their power. And the moment you stop feeding what drains you, you finally begin to grow. Let's go deeper, because this is where most people misunderstand strength. Silence and distance are not passive moves. They are deliberate decisions. We've been conditioned to believe that strength looks loud, immediate, and confrontational. That if you don't respond, you're weak. If you don't explain, you're afraid. If you walk away, you've lost. But that belief is emotional immaturity disguised as confidence. Real strength is the ability to regulate yourself when everything inside you wants to react. Think about this carefully. Every time you respond emotionally to disrespect, you teach people how to treat you. Not with words, but with tolerance. You are communicating what you will endure. And toxic people are excellent observers. They watch tone changes, response speed, emotional shifts. They notice when you get defensive. They notice when you try harder. That's how they learn where your boundaries actually are, not where you say they are. This is why distance matters. Distance is not punishment. Distance is information. It says, I understand what this interaction cost me, and I'm no longer willing to pay that price. Psychologically, this is one of the most destabilizing things you can do to someone who relies on proximity and access, because distance removes opportunity. No opportunity to provoke, no opportunity to twist your words, no opportunity to extract emotional energy. And notice something important here. You don't need to announce distance. You don't need to dramatize it. You don't need a speech. You simply change your behavior. Shorter responses, less availability, fewer explanations, more space. That quiet shift is far more powerful than confrontation because it doesn't give them anything to argue with. Here's the philosophical core of this idea. You are not obligated to attend every conflict you are invited to. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every criticism deserves clarification. No. Every misunderstanding deserves correction. Wisdom is knowing the difference between engagement that builds and engagement that drains. Silence, when chosen consciously, is not avoidance. It's discernment. And this is where people get uncomfortable. Because silence forces you to sit with unresolved tension. It removes the illusion of control that comes from having the last word. It asks you to trust that your value doesn't need constant reinforcement. That's hard, but it's also transformative. Distance works the same way. Distance forces reality to reveal itself. When you step back, people show you whether they respect you or just your availability, whether they value you or just your reactions, whether they want connection or control. And whatever they show you, believe it. There's another layer here. Most people miss silence and distance. Don't just protect you from toxic people, they retrain you. They retrain your nervous system to stop equating urgency with importance. They retrain your mind to pause before reacting. They retrain your identity away from being emotionally accessible to everyone. You stop living in response mode. You start living in choice. And choice is freedom. When you don't immediately respond, you reclaim time. When you create distance, you reclaim energy. When you stop explaining, you reclaim dignity. This is why emotionally disciplined people appear calm under pressure. They are not suppressing emotion, they are managing it. They understand that emotional restraint is not denial, it's prioritization. Not everything deserves your feelings. And here's something that may challenge. You people who accuse you of being dista, NT, cold, or silent are often the same people who benefited most from your lack of boundaries. Their discomfort is not evidence of your wrongdoing, it's evidence of your growth. Healthy people adjust to your boundaries, toxic people resent them. That distinction matters. Distance does not mean you stop caring, it means you stop sacrificing yourself to prove that you do. Silence does not mean you have nothing to say, it means you know when speaking would cost more than it gives. And this is where strength becomes visible without noise. You don't argue your standards. You live them. You don't demand respect. You remove access when it's missing. You don't explain your worth.